Happening.
Okay.
All right, we're live. Welcome back to another episode of Red Dot Forum Camera Talk. As always, I am David Farkas, joined by my co-host Josh Lehrer.
Hey there.
And producing the show, we've got Jose Rivera, as always.
Hello.
And I think our good friend Kirsten is managing the chat tonight. So shout out to Kirsten. All right, so today is going to be a little different. We do have some cameras on the table, but based on sort of popular demand and a lot of people asking, not just since we've been doing the stream, but every time I lead a workshop or, you know, when you talk about digital photography, you got to talk about what happens after you take the picture, right?
That's right.
So today, what do you think? You know, we're going to be talking about some various things and answering questions.
Yeah. So first thing I want to mention, if you thought I was a nerd, you are going to love. David is going to be on fire tonight. But definitely save this video and play it back because the stuff that he's going to be talking about is based on years of testing and research and failing and trying again and building out a good hardware and software workflow based entirely around the cameras that we love, around Leica cameras.
Yeah.
So that is what tonight is all about. Tonight is all about, okay, I've got this amazing photo I just took with my SL2. What now?
Sure.
Now, we realize there is a mountain of things to cover.
For sure.
So we'll try our best, as we always do. We are looking forward to seeing questions in the chat. Of course, we've got a lot of questions submitted ahead of time as well that we'll be getting to. But certainly, as you know, we're here. So fire questions in the chat. Afterwards, if you're watching this later, put something in the comments because we do read them and David does reply. So hopefully we can cover a lot of ground tonight.
Yeah.
I'm pretty interested to see about some of the cool stuff you've brought to show us as well.
A lot of things.
So we're going to kind of break up tonight, I think, into a few segments.
I think that makes some sense.
What are some of the, as people start to sign in,
Sure.
what are some of the sort of overarching themes people can expect to get out of tonight's episode?
Yeah, so because it's a pretty broad topic, right? And going back, kind of roll back the years, just to give you a little background, I've actually been doing this professionally and semi-professionally, but mostly professionally, since 1990. So I've got a little bit of experience in terms of the digital workflow, and I'm still learning. I am still developing new methods and new ways to do things, and integrating new tools and new improvements as they become available. Like silencing my phone. I mean, sometimes I don't remember to do that.
You're killing me.
So it's not like you have a set of information, you have a knowledge base, and then suddenly that's it, you're done.
Yeah.
And it works forever.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately it doesn't. Well, I say unfortunately, but also fortunately it doesn't. Because things get better.
Exactly.
You know, just like the cameras improve, so does the technology to handle our files, to work on them, to process them, to print them, to share them, and to back them up. You know, we have a lot more capability that I couldn't have even imagined or even dreamed of 30 years ago.
Yeah, even 10 years ago.
Even 10 years ago.
That's crazy.
You know, and to toot Josh's horn, he actually went to school for a lot of this stuff.
That's right. I've forgotten it all, though,
Yeah.
so you know.
So Josh has a, you know,
Yeah,
a
we're
degree-
both
yeah.
Tech nerds. If you know, you've watched enough episodes of this show to know that we are obsessed with the hardware and the software and the gear and
Everything.
how to use it all to get the most out of whatever we have available to us. And this is, I think, not only a huge part of that, but also one of the least maximized and understood parts because there is so much to know.
Well,
And
it almost has a stigma or a mysticism of like this elusive workflow, right?
Don't mind
the dogs. We're
He's
winning
getting
on all levels right
His
now.
early episode drinking.
It's okay. He gets it out now.
That's right.
All right. So to answer your question,
Yes.
kind of want to break it into segments. So I want to talk about computer hardware because I think it is important. I see a lot of people.
He's a thirsty dog.
Yeah, he is really thirsty. A lot of people come to me and say like, will this computer work for this? Will that work for that? And what might have worked with, say, an M10 with 24 megapixel files, maybe not keeping up with an SL2 or an M10R at 47 or 41 megapixels. You know, so as the cameras get more capable, we also need to keep up in terms of our computing power. And the good news is, as you'll learn shortly, we have a lot of really great options, and it's not as complicated as it could be.
You can't see the dog.
No.
There he is.
All right. So
Sorry.
we're going to talk about some of the hardware things and computers. And you'll notice things are a little different today. I've actually got here a PC laptop, and Josh has a Mac laptop over there, because the reality is we have people using both. So we're going to show some things back and forth there.
Yeah.
And then I think we want to get into general workflow in terms of, okay, what do I actually do to get my pictures from here to there? How do I keep track of them? And then how do I back them up so they're safe? And then I think we also want to cover the big topic, the big LR.
Yes.
Yep.
That's going to be the second half of the program.
Yeah.
Will be dedicated to not necessarily Lightroom specific, like making pictures brighter and darker, but more about good practices, settings, workflow to get the most from your Lightroom setup. So I think we should dive in.
Whew, yeah, I think so.
So there's probably something that's burning desire that I know you want to start talking about first, maybe, Dave?
I'm seeing a lot of hellos.
Yeah.
Hellos.
Well, this is awesome.
Hellos.
We like that everybody's involved. So I don't know if there's any burning questions up front.
Yeah,
in
if
the
you
chat.
guys have any questions, as always,
Yeah.
put them in the chat here, and we're going to keep an eye out for that.
Well, why don't we start with some computer hardware stuff, since that's, I think, going to be the first topic we cover tonight.
I think so.
Maybe like maybe some monitor questions, since we all have to look at our pictures. So.
Yeah, and before we dive into too many details, I just want to say right up front, a lot of the things I'm going to discuss, and maybe some things I won't get a chance to discuss, but I thought that might be interesting. I spent a while putting some links together for you guys.
Yes.
So hit the description down below the video, the see more, and you'll see links to everything from recommended iPads and MacBook Pros and PC configurations, as well as various little drives and things I'll talk about here, and card readers, as well as great resource from Adobe on how to speed up Lightroom, a link to the one-on-one Lightroom sessions that Leica Store Miami offers, and even my previous Lightroom presets for Leica article. So check out the description. That's going to be in the live version, as well as when you see this in playback.
Sweet. There's a lot of stuff in there. So
and
don't look at it now.
I
Wait till we're
actually
done.
wanted to put more in, but I hit the 5,000 character limit.
David's
so.
the only one that hits the 5,000 character limit on a computer-related YouTube video.
I'm trying to help you guys out. All
right, so why don't we start? I know we have a lot of questions, and Jose is anxious to ask us some.
Yeah.
So why don't we start with some monitor-type questions,
Sure.
since that's, I think, an interesting place to start. And then we'll kind of bounce around and see what people are asking us as well. So, Jose, fire away.
All right. First question is, can you recommend a really good display for editing? What size should I get?
Yes, I can. I've been through quite a few monitors in my time. And I think you need to establish what your, look, it's going to sound like every other episode, right?
Well, because there's a reason for that.
Depends.
Yeah.
It depends. So, obviously, you don't want a big monitor on the road. So this is going to apply more for desktop usage.
Yeah.
And obviously, when you're on the road, you've got a 14, 15, 16, or 17-inch display. But when you're at home, I would hope you want a bigger display than that. So I have been through everything from making the progression from 24 to 27 to, Josh has a 30 at home.
Yeah.
A 34-inch ultra-wide, like 21:9, which is actually what Jose's using right now. And my current monitor is a 32-inch, regular aspect ratio, just a 4K. So I've kind of been down all these roads. I could tell you that the absolute best monitor manufacturers, it was true 20 years ago, it's true today. It's ISO.
For best monitor for
Color accuracy,
Yes.
calibration.
Yeah, not for gaming or not for movies, but
probably atrociously
we wouldn't
bad.
want it for that, but
we
for,
wouldn't want it for that.
Say it again, sorry.
EIZO.
Yes.
EIZO. And they come at a price. So the EIZO, I think I have a recommendation for that below. They actually make one that's pretty cool. They make a 4K DCI model, which is one of the only manufacturers not to do 4K, but 4K DCI, which is wider than UHD. So it's really for cinema grading and things like that. It is hardware calibratable, which is pretty cool because it has a little built-in meter that swings in front of the screen, calibrates itself, and then flips back up. It is like $5,000.
Yeah.
Or $5,800 actually. It's spendy. In the same echelon, you have the Apple Pro Display XDR, which is a really nice monitor. It's very pretty, the design's amazing, and it's super, super bright. It's not as good as the EIZO. I it's the same price as the Azo, but it's not as good as the Azo. And I think a really good contender as well is that I would not have considered this 5 years ago, but it's what I have on my desk right now, which is an Asus, ASUS ProArt. They make a really high-end level of displays, and I have the 32-inch version of that. It also allows for hardware calibration and uniformity adjustment and all that. It's very, very color accurate, very high gamut. And then that's actually a bargain. My 32-inch is only $1,400. I know it's like some people pay that much for a laptop, but
perspective is important here,
But compared to a $5,000 or $6,000 display, $1,400 is actually pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
And then going down from there, I really like LG's. They have great color gamut, great color accuracy, and for about $1,000, you can get either a 34-inch ultra wide or a 38-inch 5K ultra wide, and those are really good. Just make sure if you get any kind of display, especially an ultra wide, do not get a curved display. Make sure it's a flat display, because when you're trying to get lines straight in Photoshop, you're like,
And what I'll add to that in terms of the size of the monitor.
Yeah.
I've worked with a 27-inch in like a busy office environment for a long time, so I'm not like a dedicated, like most people have in their house, a home office, whatever. And 27 inches, I feel like, is kind of the sweet spot for when you want to have a size that's manageable, that doesn't take up your whole desk, and maybe you don't have room for all that stuff without being so big you can't move it around or you can't whatever. So I have a 27-inch.
It's a Dell.
I have an NEC multi-sync here.
Yep.
And a Dell down in the store, and they both work quite well. And I think the size is good. A 30-inch I have at home is a little big for, I think, home office, but I watch movies on it. So,
yeah. So the answer, of course, it depends.
It depends.
But
and there's links, right? There's
links to all those.
Okay, good.
I tend to subscribe to the bigger is usually better.
Yeah.
So we'll take that. And listen, if you get an iMac, you get a 27-inch, and be happy with that.
Yeah.
Because it's a good sweet spot.
All right, we have more monitor questions there, I think, Jose, right? What do we got?
Is screen calibration really necessary?
What does that mean, David?
What does necessary mean?
What does screen calibration mean? Why don't we explain that first?
So it basically means how close is your screen to a known standard. Because let's say that you could have the absolute prettiest display. TVs are a good example of this.
Yeah.
Almost no TV out of the box. I don't care if it's an $8,000 television. They're so far out of calibration because they're just designed to look pretty. They're not color accurate. By and large. I'm sure you could get them calibrated, but computer displays they can be a little cool, so maybe their white balance is more towards blue, maybe they're a little warm, more towards yellow, maybe they're too bright, or their gamma is not quite right. Because if you have, let's say, sRGB or Adobe RGB, these are known color profiles, color spaces. And they have certain criteria about, okay, they need to be 300 nits of brightness, gamma of 2.2, with this kind of color space. So some monitors will say that they come factory calibrated. I know there's a lot of creator laptops and things that are factory calibrated. And that means generally they have what's called a delta E, or the little Greek symbol of a triangle with an E, capital E next to it, of less than 2. What that means is anything with a delta E of less than 2 means that it would be hard for you to tell that it's not right. Those professional monitors like the Azo and the Asus ProArt, they have a delta E of less than 1 for any color, which is incredible. That's how they're very, very precise. Some monitors aren't able to be calibrated that tightly. They're just not possible due to their backlight technology.
Yeah. I think just to...
So the answer is, it depends.
Yeah, well, okay, but the overarching concept behind calibrating a monitor is getting as much of your workflow into a known state.
I agree with that.
That's the idea. So if you're all over the place and you don't know how your colors on your monitor are going to be compared to the colors on your phone or colors on your tablet or the colors on your printer or your printer's printer, whatever, it makes it really hard to make changes and adjustments to the way you like when you don't have that reference point.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight, including screen calibration, is all about having as many known controlled variables in your workflow as possible. And it can be a little intimidating at first because it does require some additional steps and hardware, but it makes your workflow after you've done that so much easier because it's less trial and error, less guessing, and just better results. I think,
Yeah,
overall.
absolutely. So the answer is
You should calibrate your monitor.
you
but
should, but with a lot of high-end systems, they often will come pre-calibrated and they're pretty good. I'll give an example. Most late generation, in the last 4-year MacBook Pros look really good out of the box. The problem arises because they're almost too bright that they don't meet any kind of calibration standard. So let's say you're editing on a display that is color accurate, but it's too bright. And you're adjusting your exposure and your highlights and all that. And it looks amazing. And you're showing your friends, like, look at this, it looks great, right? And you go to print it. And suddenly,
Well, it's important to remember that a monitor is a transmissive viewing device. If light coming
backlit.
through, hitting you in the face, a piece of paper is a reflective viewing device, so
Yes.
light's falling onto it.
yes.
So I remember when I was in college, working with a little lab on campus, there was actually trying to design a monitor that they would put like a mask around it, and it was so well designed that it looked like a piece of paper because it was very dull and yellow compared to what you would expect.
Right.
You pull the mask away and you're like, wait, that's a screen. So what looks good on your monitor, especially with the jacked up MacBook brightness settings,
Doesn't look good.
you'd be like, wow, this is awesome. And then you go to print it and it looks horrible. Or you even put it on an iPhone or any other screen, because color profiles are brightness dependent.
True.
So when you profile your monitor, it is only profiled for that
Correct.
value of brightness.
So pro tip, number 1, make sure you disable auto brightness on whatever device you have. We were gonna show you on this
can't.
laptop, but because it's actually plugged in to external screen capture,
I also fell asleep. Oh, there it is.
the brightness, this little slider went away. So you
just-
can't do it.
Any device you have,
Yeah.
desktop, laptop, if it has an auto brightness setting,
Even your phone. Your
Yeah.
phone has auto brightness.
yeah, turn it off if your objective is to maintain a color managed monitor workflow.
You wanna maintain the same brightness.
Now, if you have a laptop
Yeah.
that you calibrate but use for other things, like if you travel with it, what I do is I just make a note of where on the brightness scale my profile is at, whether it's like a percentage or like a number of little
Clicks.
blocks, whatever.
Yeah.
I just put like a little piece of masking tape, like 6 blocks on the laptop. So then, when I'm ready to get back into editing mode,
click, click,
I
click,
know
click.
where to put the brightness at.
Yeah,
Because
that's a
if I
good
forget-
suggestion.
If I forget, then suddenly I'm like going to town and it's totally off. So-
Yeah, like a good ballpark, for example, is on a MacBook Pro. Generally, 3 clicks down from maximum tends to be a lot more accurate than maximum, if you want that. But don't think that you need a brighter display in a brighter environment or a darker display in a darker environment. Apple seems to think that.
Yeah.
The reality is you want the exact same luminance in all situations. Now, of course, your perception of how bright that screen is will change depending on what the outside light is. So it might be a good idea to have, just like you're trying to control the brightness of your screen and the color of your screens, also try to control your editing environment as much as you can.
Yeah.
So let's say that if you're going to be printing, you always want to be like in your office, at your desk, and with certain lights turned on or not turned on, so that you can maintain kind of like a scene mode of your room to make sure you have consistent illumination no matter when you're editing.
And that's a great point, and I hark right back to controlling variables. The light in your working space is a variable you may not think about, especially if you have windows and the light's changing all the time. So the objective has to be, or should be, to have the most consistent lighting in your working space, your photo office, if you will.
That's why you should work in a dungeon.
That's yes, okay, sure. I don't think most people have dungeons. Where's yours? So that's another variable, and you may not even think about it. You've got the window open. It's Sunday afternoon. You're doing some edits. They look great, and then you go to print them Sunday night, and just like, wait, these look totally off. So that is an important thing.
Yeah, and I'd say another variable of that is sometimes if you're editing for a while, you have a long editing session. It happens to me. I'll be going through images and kind of getting in a groove of editing, but I'll put it on hold, step away, and come back the next day, and suddenly some things don't look quite right to me anymore because my eyes actually adjusted to the overall toning of those images, and it wasn't necessarily accurate.
Yeah.
So even yourself, our eyes tend to have auto brightness features. So
We have pupils.
we have pupils.
All right, we've been spending a lot of time on monitors, so you want to show that real quick?
Yeah, I do want to show this.
Okay.
This is what I use for monitor calibration. It is a tangled mess. It is
There we go.
Yep.
We get a close up on that?
Yeah, I think so. I think we can get a close up. There it is.
Is that a focus?
There.
Bam. Got it.
Okay, this is an X-Rite i1 Display Pro. There used to be a thing called Color Monkey, but they actually are now owned by X-Rite as well. So X-Rite's kind of the game in town for color calibration, and you'll notice this is actually for ambient light, which, kind of like I was saying, I don't really calibrate my display to account for ambient light, so I don't really use that. This is actually the measurement for your computer, and it sits on your. I'll turn this. This just sits. Can we get a little movement here, Jose? All right. So this will sit.
Doing great.
No.
Nope.
There we go.
There you go.
So this will turn, which will sit here on your display, and it puts up some colored boxes. So those are known values.
Right, you get software that comes with the device that project colored boxes on the monitor, and
so it measures the difference between what they are supposed to be and what they measured, and then it puts an offset in, which is what your monitor profile is. It's basically an offset for all the different colors to correct it to be more accurate. And so that's an i1 display. I've got a link to that. I think it's like $270. And these things last for years. They don't they don't cost a lot compared to what they were. About 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I remember buying a professional X-Rite colorimeter spectrophotometer, $10,000.
Wow.
And that's what we use to generate printer profiles and monitor profiles. And it was a lot bigger than this and many, many times the cost.
Yeah.
But it's the same technology that's in this that was in the $10,000 profiling device.
Sweet.
Yep. All right. I think we covered monitors and calibration.
Yes, I think we have. Before we do more,
Are there more questions about that?
Anything in the chat?
Yeah, there were a couple of people asking about BenQ monitors.
I've also heard okay things about BenQ. I don't have personal experience, so I do with all the others. But BenQ does make a professional color series that I have heard good things about that compare both in terms of features, specifications, and price to the Asus monitors.
Yeah, but we haven't tested it. So
I haven't tested it, but I have heard very good things about the BenQs.
Okay, it's worth a look if
I
you.
have one more, which I think is a really good question. Is a monitor that is good for color editing good for monochrome? Is there any special consideration for monitors for monochrome editing?
It would be, actually that's exactly right. The question is exactly right. So the closer you can get to neutral gray, and the old test to see how good a monitor is that we used to do, and you can still do it, is basically once you're fully calibrated, go into Photoshop, create a new document at screen resolution. Josh knows exactly what I'm talking about. And do a gradient from white to black, draw it straight across the screen, let go, and it should be completely smooth all the way through, and you should see, and also you should see only one area of black and one area of white, and it should be a smooth gradation all the way through. If you have stepping, or if you have, even worse, bands of color, so you could actually have like green or blue or red in certain tonality ranges, that means the monitor is not the best. So if you want to look at really what the difference of a monitor like an ASO or the Asus ProArt versus a, I don't know, whatever monitor, that's going to be a big difference. So for monochrome work, you absolutely want as dead neutral as you can get it, because remember, the monitor is an RGB device, not a monochrome device. So it has to mix red, green, and blue to make a perfectly neutral color, and the closer and the more accurate it can be, the more accurate it is to your grayscale images.
Absolutely, because color affects contrast. So
And
if
color
your color
affects
is
contrast,
off, it's going to be hard to edit the monochrome files, even though they have no color, because it's going to affect the way the exposure and contrast renders.
For sure.
Still matters, for sure.
It does.
Anything else in there, Jose?
Anything related to monitors, or
Just want to make sure we.
if we actually
Put
blow
that
by
issue-
this, I'm going to be really happy.
Yeah, I think we can move on. I think we can get on to some more computer hardware stuff.
Okay, moving on.
All
Oh,
yes. What?
I actually see something in here that I do want to address.
Okay.
I'm just glancing over, and someone's asking about P3. So you'll see a lot of monitors talk about color gamut. So Apple's like, oh, it's a P3 monitor, or there's Adobe RGB, sRGB, like I mentioned before. These are color spaces, and Josh, do you want to explain
Sure.
what's the difference between a color space when they say it's a bigger color space?
Essentially, any device, whether it's a phone or say a monitor or a printer, anything that creates color has a finite amount of range, even your camera, of how much of that color it can actually reproduce. So it's even program specific. Certain programs can only produce a certain amount of color. So the web, everything on the web is sRGB, for example. So the smallest traditionally used color space, meaning the one with the least amount of color, I would say color dynamic range, if you want to call it that,
absolutely.
is
Color,
sRGB.
color volume often is what we talk about.
Okay,
It's
color
like
volume.
a 3D blob.
So when I edit for web, I always edit in sRGB. As you go up to Adobe RGB, it's a wider or a larger or deeper color space. P3 is very, very close to Adobe RGB.
But it's shifted off a little
shifted
bit.
like towards the green or
reds,
I always forget which one it is. I think P3 came from like digital cinema.
It
and
is.
Apple repurposed it.
Yep. P3 is more for, and to answer that question directly, so P3 is a, it's more for professional video and color grading. And if you select P3 profile on your device, you'd be like, that looks off. But Adobe RGB is typically the widest color gamut that we would output, print, or look for a monitor display in, right?
And most profiling programs and anything that can display a profile,
Like
or
this.
when you make a profile for your monitor or printer, it will actually show you a graphical representation of that profile.
That's right.
And you can overlay it over Adobe RGB, sRGB, P3, ProPhoto RGB, or whatever, and see, my printer can actually do reds that are outside of sRGB or outside of Adobe RGB. So I remember in college when we were making printer profiles, making sure that we knew where the threshold was for our various RGB colors so that I wouldn't over or under saturate something on the extreme end.
Right.
We're getting a little on the technical side, but again, it's think of it as like dynamic range for exposure. It's kind of, but instead of for brightness levels, it's for color.
Color saturation levels.
Yeah, color saturation.
Yeah. So the amount of various colors that you can
So
reproduce.
either a P3 or a Adobe RGB monitor is going to be pretty good.
But if you can find a 100% Adobe RGB monitor,
Right, that's sweet.
that's going to be the
Did
best.
they do that? I might have been up on that. I remember like 98% was the big thing.
Every single one of the monitors I recommended in the list are all 100% Adobe RGB.
Nice. Okay.
And I mean, there's actually even bigger spaces in P3, but you don't have to worry about them.
Yeah. Right. At a certain point, you're working backwards.
They have there's like a $70,000 Sony monitor that can display.
We need that.
Rec BT 2020, which is a massively large space.
Now
So
we're getting to
you don't need to do that.
All right. I think we've done enough monitor questions. What's next? Let's talk about what should we talk about?
Oh, I see someone's asking about CPU cores and RAM.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. Now, we're gonna get even nerdier than usual. So there are an infinite number of ways you can configure a personal computer, Mac or PC. You buy one.
Why don't we talk that first?
Well, let me finish. So you buy one. You can buy one ready-made. You can customize one. You can build your own. It's a whole world into itself. David is passionate about computer building, and he's brought some cool stuff to show. But don't be intimidated by this because there are ways around it. You don't have to get out the screwdriver and your headlamp and your anti-static bracelet and go crazy.
I wouldn't think so.
Well, I have been a PC guy forever. But I'll let you take this because you use Mac. This is your laptop, not mine. Mac versus PC for our applications for photography. Is there a difference? And if there is, what is it? If there isn't, why not?
So it depends.
Oh my
Yeah. Okay. So going in the Wayback Machine, take us all the way back to the 90s.
We don't need to go back to the 90s, David.
I'm just saying.
Come on.
I'm just saying, way back when at the dawn of digital imaging, you basically, if you wanted to work in imaging, you worked on a Mac. And that has held true kind of through the ages. A lot of people still believe, if I want to do imaging, I have to use a Mac. I hear it all the time. That's not true.
Say it again. What's not true?
You don't have to use a Mac.
Thank you.
And you don't have to use a PC. The great thing is, in today's day and age, these systems currently, until Apple changes that, because they're going to, use the same hardware on the inside. So I have, an Intel chip in here, there's an Intel chip in that laptop. They just run different software. And it also used to be that when you bought a software license, let's say for Photoshop, you'd have to choose, I want this as Mac or I want this as PC. Now, you just install Photoshop. It works on both. Office works on both, whatever. All the programs work on everything. This is my PC laptop, that's my Mac laptop. I have an iPhone. Yes, I have my iCloud, or my my camera roll goes right into my PC laptop over the cloud. I have iPhotos on this, or iCloud. I have Microsoft OneDrive over there. It does, everything talks to everything else.
Yeah.
So we're no longer in this, what I feel, there's no more religious debate over Mac or PC.
In terms of functional benefits, I would certainly understand if some people prefer the hardware,
Absolutely.
they're used to it, and that's
Right.
cool. In 2020, it's okay to go either way,
Yes.
Mac or PC. You're not hurting yourself in terms of performance or getting the most out of
Now I will give some advantages here and there, okay?
Fire away.
And I think most of those advantages I'm gonna heap on the Mac for right now. All right, so Josh talked about color management. One of the big advantages of Mac OS is that it is color management at the OS level. That is a fundamental difference that I have to acknowledge. So for instance, when you have a photo that you launch in preview, or if you bring it into Photoshop, or you bring it onto a website, it's gonna look the same across everything. On a PC, if you have a non-color managed application, it won't look right, especially on high gamut displays like Adobe RGB displays. Sometimes if it's not profile aware, it is expecting sRGB, and suddenly you feed it this high gamut image and it looks like nuclear. So it's not great. But generally speaking, when we talk about photo applications, any kind of Adobe program is going to be color managed. And most of the built-in stuff is color managed. And Google Chrome is color managed, et cetera.
Yeah.
So that's becoming a lot less of an issue than it was 5 years ago. With a Mac, I say also the advantage is they are highly optimized because they don't allow anything from the outside to come in. So they tend to get better battery life. They tend to run quieter. They tend to run a little smoother. And you open up a Mac, you plug it in, and it starts working, right? You don't have to install all sorts of stuff. You don't have to configure it. Now, I'll say on the PC side, you have the ability to configure it and to optimize it and to upgrade it often. Now, if you take a Mac laptop, if you didn't, and we're gonna get into this a little more detail, if you don't spec out enough RAM, that's it. You can never put more RAM in it. On a PC, almost every PC laptop, even the thin and lights and high performance competitors to the MacBook Pro, allow you to upgrade your RAM, your SSD, sometimes your Wi-Fi card. So you have a lot more upgradability. And you tend to get more performance per dollar on a PC than you do on a comparable Mac. So it's really a balance. I would also say that you get generally better GPU performance on a PC laptop.
What is GPU?
Graphics, your graphics card.
So you gotta like balance out the lingo, you know.
So graphics card, you generally get better graphics card options on a PC. For photo editing, irrelevant. You don't, whatever is in the Mac is totally fine. But if you're gonna be doing video editing like I do, the PC is generally better for Adobe Premiere or DaVinci Resolve.
Good answer.
Okay, so that is kind of my Mac versus PC discussion. The bottom line, just to reiterate, use whatever you're comfortable with and what you like, because it's really difficult in today's day and age with the level of technology.
Right.
As long as you're kind of adhering to the basic specifications.
And that's the key, I'm gonna interrupt, is we are saying it doesn't matter, but it only doesn't matter when you spec it out and you build it correctly.
Yeah.
Or at least to a standard that is known to perform at a certain level in Lightroom and Photoshop, which we're gonna talk about probably right now.
Sure.
Why don't we get into a little bit about processors? I'm just gonna take Jose's job for a second here.
Okay.
Because you have two primary variables for processors, right? Frequency and cores.
Yes.
So frequency is like the gigahertz.
How fast
How many
it goes.
gigahertz, how fast does it go? And cores is the number of cores that the processor has. So when I see, and I go online, I see 4 core, 6 core, 8 core, 2 gigahertz. Of those two things, how do I understand, how do I translate that into English for me as someone who just wants to get good performance out of Lightroom?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
More is better. More frequency, more cores. Absolutely. Now, there's a trade-off with that if we're talking about laptops or we're talking about desktops. Because in the laptop world, if you have too many cores or too much power, you're going to have a lot less battery life. But it's going to get the job done faster, so maybe you don't need as much battery life.
And if you're plugged in, it's irrelevant.
And it's plugged in, you're irrelevant.
Yeah.
On a desktop, man, you're on shore power. Just let it rip, right? So there is a point, though, of diminishing returns. I would absolutely say that. So let's give an example. So this Mac here it's an older one, so it's a few years old, and it's got a quad-core i7 in it with what they call hyper-threading. Hyper-threading just means that it has like different cycles. I'm trying to simplify this as much as I can. It shows to the operating system as 8 cores, not 4, because it's able to give instructions, kind of multiple times a cycle. I don't want to get too technical.
Keep moving.
Keep moving. Okay. So a lot of these chips have hyper-threading. An i7, i9s do. And the latest i5s do too.
i5, i7, those are processors.
Those are Intel
Intel
processors.
like the CPU that.
Yeah. So that shows as 8 cores, but it's really 4 physical cores, and what we call 8 virtual cores. This laptop is about 2 years old, so that's about 5 years old. This is about 2 years old, and this has a 6-core physical cores, and it has 12 virtual cores that it shows to the operating system and the programs. So because of the fact that this is 3 years newer, it's a new architecture, and it has 50% more cores, this can do Lightroom a lot faster than that can, just because.
Yeah.
It also can run at a higher frequency. But and this is interesting because Apple MacBooks have had a historically challenging time around 2016, 2017, 2018, where they had what's called thermal throttling. So it doesn't matter how many cores and how fast it goes, if it overheats, in order to protect itself, if it can't get cooled down fast enough, it will slow down, like way down. So you'd be better off running a less powerful chip, and you'll actually get a faster computer. Thankfully, in the 2020 16-inch MacBook Pro, they've addressed the thermal issues by making it thicker and putting in beefier fans, better cooling, and it runs a lot faster now. And that has as much as an 8-core processor. So at laptops right now, 8 cores is kind of where you can get up to.
Right.
On the desktop side, I would say 8 cores is really where you should start.
We're talking 8 physical cores.
8 physical cores,
Okay.
16 virtual
So the
cores.
processor spec's going to be 8 core. Okay.
Now, on my desk, I'm a longtime Intel guy. I actually transitioned to AMD because they kind of took the lead. And I use a 12-core AMD chip in my home, like sort of compact build. Okay, it's very, very small. But it's 12 cores, 24 virtual cores, and it just rips through Lightroom. The computer that Jose is sitting at is a bit on, when I talk about overkill, that's a bit on the overkill side. So that uses an AMD Threadripper, 24 physical cores with 48 virtual cores.
I can hear it from here.
It's actually very quiet, but that machine is stupid fast. That is what you could render special effects for a movie. In fact, the Terminator Dark Fate was rendered on the same system. Okay, so that kind of brings us into like the Mac Pro. The Mac Pro has up to 28 cores. And I'm going to tell you right now, you actually don't need that many cores. So when I say diminishing returns, I think the sweet spot's about 12 to 16 or even 10 to 16 right now for Lightroom and Photoshop. When you get more than that, like Josh is saying, there's a balance because there's frequency as well, or how fast it is, how fast it moves. And generally speaking, when you have a lot of cores in a small space, it can generate a lot of heat if it's too fast. So the more cores will generally run slower per core, but that's changing a little too.
So what's a good frequency that you recommend? Let's get
Some
hard facts.
Intel versus AMD, I mean, have different frequencies, and they're not apples to apples because AMD is more efficient. It can get more work done in less time.
Okay.
Intel's kind of the brute force, like just throw some horsepower at it. So they're going to make it go faster, and they can kind of almost catch up. So on an Intel chip, I'd say they can now burst to about 5.3 gigahertz, which is pretty fast. The AMD chips can only hit about 4.6 on burst. but yet they're still faster than Intel's 5.3 on a per what we call IPC, or instructions per clock.
Now we're getting real technical. Let's back up for 1 second. If I'm buying a computer
Yes.
in 2020,
Yes.
let's say I'm buying something pre-built,
Yes.
what are the least or the lowest spec you would recommend
Sure.
for Lightroom?
So I dropped that. I actually have those in the comments because I figured that would be a question.
Okay.
So let's talk about MacBook Pro. I don't really recommend a 13-inch MacBook Pro for serious photo editing because it's only 4 cores.
So
And
no matter what,
no matter what, 4 cores.
you can only get 4 cores and that's it.
Not only that, there's a third variable we didn't talk about, which is they're ultra low voltage. They're power efficient because they're designed to have all day battery life. They're not nearly as powerful as a what we call full fat processor like in a 16-inch MacBook Pro. So I think the MacBook Pro processors are 45 watts and the 13-inch ones are like 15 or 25 watts. So they don't consume as much power, therefore they can't do as much work. Simple as that. So unless you really, 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 really need the portability, I would not recommend, especially when we get in high megapixel cameras, of using a MacBook Air or a 13-inch MacBook Pro. Those are better for productivity tasks, emails, and Word and whatever, web browsing. They're a great Starbucks computer. But the 16-inch MacBook Pro is a beast when it comes to editing. And I would recommend they come in either 6-core or 8-core. I think 6-core is okay. 8-core is going to be a lot better. I really recommend 8-core if you're going with a MacBook Pro.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a lot more to go from the 6 to the 8, and you'll thank me later because it'll be useful for that much longer.
Mm.
If you're getting a PC laptop like a Dell XPS, same applies. 8-core, just because they use the same processors. If we're looking at a desktop, let's say you're getting an iMac, the 27-inch comes in a 6, an 8, or a 10. Cores.
Yeah.
I recommend the 8, or if you can make the jump, definitely spend the extra, $200, get the 10-core, because you're just going to get that much more work done that much faster.
Well, let me ask you a follow-up on that.
Yeah.
So in your experience building computers and doing computers for all this time, is it actually better to invest more up front, or does it get outdated so quickly it's better to just buy a cheaper computer new every 2 or 3 years? What do you think is better?
Yes.
Don't give me one of those it depends answers.
It doesn't depend. Yes is the answer. I'm maybe not a good person to ask because I generally will upgrade laptops every 2 to 3 years.
Okay, that's a good answer.
Because I do, in normal years, I do travel a lot on the road,
Mm-hmm.
and I take a lot of pictures when I'm shooting. So if I'm going out to a destination for 2 weeks, I'm taking 4,000 images, and they're 47 megapixel, and they might need to be stitched or HDR blended or whatever. And the thing about going at that pace, especially with landscape photography, is you're up at the crack of dawn for the sunrise. You're shooting all day because the light's great, and why would you ever rest? And then you're out at sunset. And then, oh wait, there's Northern Lights or Milky Way. So sleep. Who sleeps? But by the same token, I really recommend that trying to stay at least ingesting, and we'll talk about that in the workflow section, ingesting and keeping up with your photos so that you've always downloaded everything up to the point of shooting, so you don't run the risk of losing anything if you're out shooting and something happens to your camera or card. The faster you can ingest and download and work through images, the better it's going to be for your sleep. That's my attitude. So the technology is changing quickly enough that I usually feel the need to upgrade every 2 or 3 years. That being said, I used to hold this position of I'm not going to get the fastest, I'm going to get the second fastest. I kind of sort of do that now. Like my home computer, I use an AMD 12-core. The best that they have for that series is a 16-core, and it's about like $400 more. I don't necessarily see the benefit of going all the way, but I've gone most of the way.
Okay. Well, that's a good answer.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess it depends if you're talking laptop or desktop. Desktops have more upgradability. I can take that chip out, put another chip in.
Well, I think that's a big point too, is just to rehash that, laptops are going to get outdated faster than desktops. in general. Because no matter how good they are, period, you cannot upgrade them if it's a MacBook. And even a PC laptop is going to be limited. You can't update the processor, or the video card is not practical,
exactly.
Right? And they generally will also have a theoretical maximum amount of memory, maybe number of physical slots.
They're pretty good now.
Nowadays, it's not as big a deal, right? So laptops, short answer is laptops you'll replace more if you want to keep up with the times. Desktop has more modularity, more flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be real, like that 24-core honkin' desktop over there, I don't think it's going to be outdated anytime soon because I mean, you can't even fathom how much faster it is than any other computer that I use. It's stupid.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, what we're using that for is video encoding. Right now, that computer is capturing, as I'm talking, it is capturing 4 streams of 4K 10-bit, and it's resampling that, laying in graphics, doing color grading, all that, re-encoding it, and uploading it to YouTube in real time.
That's why we look so good.
That's why we look so good. Because the computer's so fast.
We got 24 cores.
I get 12, Josh gets 12.
So that was pretty intense. Why don't we take a quick look, either Jose or David, at the comments, because we've been going on and on.
Yeah, let me just follow up on
Oh, yeah. Wow, there's a lot of stuff.
What about editing on an iPad Pro?
Oh, are we there yet? I don't think we're there yet.
I don't think we're there yet.
We will talk
We're
about
going to talk about that.
We will get there because we have one right here.
RAM. Okay, RAM is a good
All right,
question.
let's talk about RAM. This is your area, but
Yep.
why don't we, what is RAM? Also known as?
No one has to know what it means.
What I mean is also known as memory, like computer memory.
Computer memory.
That's what I mean.
It looks like this.
Memory, yeah.
RAM actually stands for random access memory.
That's not what I mean.
There you go.
It's not that. What I mean is what is its function and why do I need more of it?
Because more is always better, right?
Problem solved.
Yeah, so this is RAM. Just
That's a stick of RAM.
This is a stick of RAM that is, I don't know how much it is. I think it's 16 gigabytes or
whatever.
Actually, yeah, 8 gigabyte sticks. So what I'm holding is, this actually came out of a computer that I upgraded. So this is 32 gigabytes of RAM. So it's 4 8 gig sticks. And this is fancy because it has heat spreaders and all that. This went into my previous editing workstation, but I upgraded it to 64 gigabytes because you can do that when you build your own. So let's talk about RAM. I'm gonna make it super duper simple, okay? Bare minimum for right now, for the programs that we run, for the cameras that we shoot, the bare minimum that you should ever get in a laptop or a desktop is 16 gigabytes. Full stop. There is no exception. But I have 8. No, 16. 16 is the bare minimum. You will get better performance with 32. I've seen test after test after test. That Mac laptop was kitted out to the max at 16, and Apple was getting crap for years because people are like, oh, we want more than 16. We want more than 16. That didn't happen until, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, where they allowed 32. And now in the current 2020 models, you can get up to 64. You can save yourself a lot of money. You don't need 64 for photo editing. You will see almost no difference in performance between 32 and 64 for photography. Yes, even if you're doing, 187 megapixel multi-shot and you're stitching and HDR, the only reason to do that is if you want to have Lightroom open and Photoshop open and 500 Google Chrome tabs. That's really the only reason.
Sort of like your computer.
Like my computer, exactly. 64, I use 64 both on the Threadripper build and other systems, other editing systems, because that's really necessary for doing 4K video rendering with multiple streams.
That's a big, just to rehash that again, the requirements for photo editing.
16.
32
is better.
But what about video editing? Starting at?
Well, my desktop at home, my 12-core, I have 32 gigs, and I can do 4K video editing just fine in Premiere. But I'm like using 30 out of 32. There's no breathing room.
So if you're not planning on doing video editing like me, 32, 16 is gonna work for you. Don't feel like you have to go 64. No. That's the takeaway from this.
You absolutely don't, because Apple's gonna charge you an arm and a leg to put 64 gigs of RAM in your laptop.
Yeah, and it's
not necessary.
You spend that money somewhere else.
If you do get an iMac, you can absolutely do not pay for RAM upgrades from Apple or Dell if you don't have to. I have links to that as well. The like an iMac, you can upgrade your like Apple wants, I think, $400 to upgrade to 32 gigs. You can do it for $130.
Yeah. So buy the RAM from another third-party reseller.
They sell it on Amazon. A company called OWC, called Otherworld Computing. They've been making Mac upgrades for as long as I can remember. I mean, we upgraded that Mac back in the day.
That was fun.
So OWC is great. Crucial.com is great. That's Micron. They're a huge company that makes memory. So there's memory that's guaranteed to be compatible with your precise Mac or PC. And it's not like the old days where like you could break something. It's really super easy.
Really easy. And there's tons of YouTube videos about how to install RAM in every version of every computer. So
yeah, but you can save a ton of money if you can upgrade it yourself, like on a 27-inch iMac. They make it super easy. There's 4 slots in there. You cannot do it on a Mac laptop. It's soldered on, cannot be upgraded. So you got to make sure to buy it correct in the first place. And again, if it's a choice between getting a faster processor or 64 gigs of RAM, get the faster processor, 32 gigs of RAM. You'll get better performance.
There you go.
Yeah.
Moving on. What else do we have in terms of questions here? Jose, you got anything for us while we're poking around?
Related to
Computer hardware.
RAM. Okay.
Yeah, RAM, or we should talk about hard drives next. Let's just poke
there's
around.
a question about SSDs.
Yeah, so why don't we talk
drive.
about a little bit about both the size and type of hard drives that you're going to recommend for what you would pick if you're buying a laptop that you're not going to upgrade. And also if you're either buying or building a desktop.
Sure. I mean, a laptop, again, it comes back to that. If you're buying a MacBook, one of the drawbacks is you have to make that decision up front. You have to make that investment up front. Because generally speaking, the price of memory over time has done this. It goes down. That's why I was able to replace a 32 gigabyte kit from 2016. This cost like $700 back then. I replaced it with 64 gigs for less than half that price because the price of memory has gone down significantly. The price of SSDs has gone down significantly. So we can get more space for less money. If you're buying a Mac laptop, you have to pay the price right now. So what I would recommend let's say for a laptop, if you're buying a Mac, I would say 1 terabyte is a good average. If you're getting an iMac, 27-inch iMac, you also cannot open it to upgrade the SSD. So I would recommend a 1 terabyte SSD.
What is an SSD?
A solid state drive.
Thank you. What is that?
That is, if this was a hard drive, and I did that.
He did that on purpose.
I did that on purpose. That would not go well for you.
Yeah.
Solid state drive is very similar to, for instance, same kind of technology that's in a solid state memory card.
Yeah.
Right? So an SD card that goes in your camera is a solid state memory device. This is a solid state drive.
No moving parts.
No moving parts.
The old hard drives literally had a physical disk that would
Like
spin
this.
like that. If it gets bumped or knocked, it's broken. If you
exposed to a high magnetic field.
you fly with, who knows? It also is limited by how fast it can spin.
Correct. It's very slow.
Whereas a solid state drive has no moving parts.
Nope, very fast.
So it is way faster.
Right. I mean, this RAM is solid state memory.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. So solid state drive, the only downside is that it's more expensive.
Yes.
Especially as you get really
big.
into like terabytes, it gets significantly
Right.
more. But every year it gets cheaper.
Yes.
Like dramatically cheaper.
Yes.
So I have a desktop that I built 10 years ago. And when I first built it, I had a 250 gig spinning, slow, junky hard drive. A few years later, solid state drives got cheap. I just switched it out with a 256 gig Samsung solid state drive, and the performance difference was
night and day.
Like 5 times faster.
In fact, I can tell you, Jose and our coworker Ashlyn are both rocking 2012 MacBooks. I know that I helped Ashlyn out because her computer was taking minutes to boot up. I mean, like,
a while.
You could go get lunch and come back while Lightroom loaded. We opened it up. Back then, Apple let you actually crack the case and replace the parts. So we put in a memory kit that was $70 for a 16 gig kit, and she was at 4 gigabytes when she got it new, and she had a 500 gig spinning drive. We replaced that with a 1 terabyte solid state drive. So the upgrades cost $200, and it felt like a brand new laptop.
Yeah.
I mean, it went from booting up in like 3 or 4 minutes to booting up in 15 seconds. So thankfully, pretty much any computer you buy today is going to be based on solid state technology, which is great because it just makes the experience of loading programs, of bringing images up, just that much faster. There is a difference of speed in SSDs, which I'll go over briefly. So, this is actually a pretty old one. This is a Samsung T3. It's probably like a 500 gig or 256 or something. I keep adding to my collection. This is an external drive. It's got a little USB-C connector there, or Thunderbolt 3, whichever. And, there you go. So this kind of solid-state drive is what's called like SATA technology, and it's about 500 megabyte a second. The same as, actually, the what's in here.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's actually screwed together. This is, I just want to show, the same technology. This is actually an Atomos drive, which you can see there. This is what goes into my video recorder when we record videos from the SL2. And it's got actually a SATA connector here. And I have, so I could put the footage from the camera that goes onto this. This is a 2 terabyte SSD. And this is a SATA to USB 3 connector. And I could just load it into my computer. So that's actually how I get footage from our cameras into our computer using this. But again, it's only 500 megabyte a second. That's pretty fast compared to a spinning drive that's a max of about 120 megabytes a second. Now, stepping up from there, we have what's actually in my current desktop. And this is, I've got a link to this specific drive because I love this drive. This is a Sabrent Rocket NVMe PCIe M.2 2 terabyte drive. All the numbers, all the letters.
A lot of words.
A lot of words.
Yeah.
This one is 30. Well, it's 3,500 megabytes per second.
Wow. Seven times faster.
Read and write.
Yeah.
This is only $279 for 2 terabyte. This is the best deal in the world. I love these drives.
And there's just to say, there's a link to this one.
There's a link to this one
in the description. Okay, good. So you don't have to write it down. It's written there for you. So.
And actually, in our main video computer, I have 3 or 4 of those in there because the motherboard actually can hold 4 of these M.2 drives.
Nice.
That's when you get into workstation class stuff, you can really upgrade it.
Yeah, you should see the size of the case. It's like the size of a small house.
It looks like an aquarium, actually. It's glass.
It's very big.
It's very pretty.
Yeah.
Now, if we kind of roll back and talk about, say, like a Dell XPS 15 or Dell XPS 17 that was just introduced a few months ago, they actually have 2 M.2 slots inside the computer that you can upgrade and put 2 of these in, or 1 of these, or add. When a 4 terabyte becomes as cheap as this, you can add that later.
So M.2 is basically just the interface that the hard drive plugs into. They've evolved over the years. They had IDE, and then they had
SATA,
yeah. And then, so this is just, it's like going from a serial port to a USB port. That's the best analogy I could make.
Or Thunderbolt 2 to Thunderbolt 3 or whatever.
Just upgrading the interface between the hard drive and the computer.
Yeah. So the interface, M.2 is the form factor, and the interface is called NVMe, because you can still find M.2 SATA drives that are not any faster than the regular ones.
Yeah.
I really don't think that anybody should be using one of these. This is mine, I admit it. I haven't used it, but I pulled it out of a drawer. So this is a Western Digital My Passport drive. This is what we used to back our photos up to in the field. And I think it's I think it's a 2 terabyte, maybe 4 terabyte, something like that.
But that's a spinning drive.
This is a spinning hard drive. You notice how thick this guy is here. And it was USB 3. You can see the connector.
Pretty modern.
Pretty modern. It's blue. But if I drop this from this height onto the table,
it's done.
It's toast.
Yeah.
So the problem is that if I put this into an overhead bin and it gets rattled in flight, if I drop it in my luggage, it's gone.
Yeah.
And what's even worse is if you have one of these. So this is also one of mine.
These were like the cat's meow, 7 years ago.
Right.
They were all
7 years ago, 2 years ago.
Oh, really? That recently?
Yeah.
Oh,
so this is a Western Digital, I think my book something, I don't know. This is a desktop one that sits on your desk, and it actually needs AC power because it's pretty heavy too.
Yeah.
It's like
it's a beast.
Yeah, it's a beast. This weighs like as much as some laptops do today.
Yeah.
So this has a spinning hard drive in it. It is actually faster than the little one, and I think this is an 8 terabyte. But what happens is, as these gotten bigger, if you have file corruption on this or drive failure, you lose everything. Hooray! And I'm gonna have to do it. Ashlyn, who I mentioned.
Oh.
I know, sad face Ashlyn. Ashlyn had one of these kind of drives, and actually had all her graduate photography projects on it, and all these like thesis projects, and did all this work on there, and had no backup. And her drive went belly up. And I tried as much as I could through my limited experience to try to recover it. Could not be recovered. She ended up sending it off to a drive recovery service where they physically take apart the hard drive and get the platters out and like read it on a sector by sector basis. Very, very intensive.
I think they use an electron microscope for that kind of work.
They use something technical.
Pretty wild.
They were able to recover most of her data. $3,000 later. $3,000. So spinning drives are not great unless they're part of an overall backup strategy, which we'll get into in the backup section.
Yeah.
But I just want to talk about this. So basically, for the price, I recommend, again, like this for inside your computer if you have that upgradability. For external drives, currently, I like the T5s, but now they've gone from 500 megabyte a second to 1,000.
Do you have links to these?
I do.
Okay. There are links.
Samsung T7, and then Sabrent actually makes some external drives that are really good. And I want to just give a safety tip here. Okay. Get a close-up of that. We can talk about this a little later. I have a label on here, and it has my name, my phone number, and my email address. Why does it have that? Because if you drop one of these and it has 2 terabytes of your photos on it from a trip, like I did when I was going through customs, coming back from Iceland, all those photos went bye-bye. The drive didn't have my name on it, so they're really small, they're really light, they're really easy to carry around, they're also really easy to lose and drop out of your bag when you're in a hurry.
Especially for this guy who drops everything.
Especially for me. So make sure to put a label on it with your name and address.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, moving on.
All right,
that's SSDs.
One more question. What about Fusion drives?
No. Fusion drive is Apple's fancy way of saying it's a spinning drive.
Well, I think they're called hybrid drives as well.
Yeah, hybrid. Seagate tried it for a while.
Yeah.
It's basically has a very small SSD that they use as what's called a cache to accelerate the transfer of commonly used files, but the majority of them are going to sit in your spinning drive.
Yeah.
It has the same problems. Once it goes past that high speed, it's going to drop very precipitously to slower speeds, and you have the exact same problems with drive failure.
All right. I think, like, because we're almost at the point we got to get
Halfway,
into the Lightroom side. But the last thing we should probably discuss, if we're talking about hard drives, is backups. Are you ready for that, David?
Yeah, someone's asking about NAS.
Yeah. I think backup is a good. I mean, there's going to be a ton of questions here, but I think I do want to talk about backup, and then we'll sort of change tracks to Lightroom and Lightroom related. I
do want to. There is a question about
Yes.
that I should address because it was one major component that we didn't discuss, which is graphics cards.
Okay, briefly.
It's not as important as you may be led to believe.
For photo editing.
Currently, for photo editing.
Currently.
Lightroom does use GPU acceleration, but almost any modern GPU will work. And really, it's just to smooth out like image scrolling and zooming and things like that. You'll see it a lot in Photoshop. If you zoom into an image, it's very fluid. If you have a good GPU. If not, it's just steps. That's really not a big deal. And in Lightroom, it also speeds up your slider responsiveness, which actually will make a big difference for editing if you're doing a lot of images and big images. But whatever you're going to get in a 16-inch MacBook is going to be a great video card. They use AMD cards. PCs generally use NVIDIA cards. Where it actually matters is if you're going to be doing video editing, and then I really recommend the NVIDIA GPUs because they use what's called NVENC encoding, which is like 3 to 5 times faster than using your CPU. But basically, the resource I'm going to recommend is check out Puget Systems, P-U-G-E-T Systems. There's a link. They actually do build computers. That's their business. But they do lots and lots of testing because their clients are actually creative professionals using applications. So they want to test what components make the most difference for an application like Photoshop or Adobe Lightroom or After Effects or Premiere. And they have different hardware recommendations for each of those because they have very comprehensive testing for each of those programs. And you can see what makes a difference, CPU versus GPU. And generally speaking, if you are building or speccing out a laptop, the NVIDIA RTX 2060 is where I'd start. You don't see a whole lot of benefit going up from there for general photo stuff. And in Mac, the 550M is fine for just about everything.
Okay.
So yeah, that's GPU.
Let's talk about backup, and then we're gonna get onto Lightroom. I promise. I know that's what everybody's waiting for. Well, I have some goodies to show, and then we're gonna get into Lightroom. So, but let's talk about backing up, because of course, no matter how good your photos are, if you lose them, they are non-existent.
Really?
So yeah, that's what I've been told. So, I'll kick off to David. So, what is, I would say, both your current or ideal backup strategy? What do you recommend? Obviously, we're a business, so we can do things a little differently. What do you recommend for the individual user to ensure that the photos that they take, if they are lost on their primary drive, are maintained? Go.
All right. So I'm going to keep it at the very simplest level. I gave you this.
That's not true.
I gave you this sad face that I lost this drive. Not this drive. I lost a drive just like it when I was coming back from a week and a half trip to Iceland a few years ago, and thankfully, my first backup strategy is this. There they are. Yeah. And I've talked about this in previous episodes.
Now he's going to show it.
I'm actually going to show it.
Where's the close-up?
So here we go. I pulled just a couple baggies. These are very high-tech plastic baggies. There we go. And you can see there is memory cards inside of these.
These are 2x3-inch 4mm poly bags. You get them on Amazon.
Yep. For like nothing, right?
Very cheap. Yeah.
And I can't actually read the front, but it says here. Oh, there we go. So this says Iceland Workshop 2017. And that's what's in this bag with, you'll notice, 4 64 gig memory cards. That's how many pictures I shot. We have, this is a family trip, Philadelphia and Bar Harbor, Maine, June 2017, like M10. And there's just one card because I didn't shoot as many pictures. And this one is a Airstream to go, Southwest Adventure, October 2017, like SL. And there's 2 memory cards in there, okay? Now this is very, very low tech, but why? You can come back. Hello, there we go. So why didn't I freak out when I lost my drive? Because I knew that all those pictures, all those memory cards were still in my card wallet, which was attached to my camera bag. The drive fell out of my computer bag. I kept them in separate bags. That's a backup strategy. I did not overwrite any of the memory cards that I used on that trip because that's my first level of backup. If I lose all the photos, either the computer disappears, the drive disappears, which it did. All I had to do is, because I had a backup of my Lightroom catalog, which was not on that drive, just the raw files, I was able to then restore all those images to a new drive and then just tell Lightroom where to go look for them. And I lost nothing. Nothing. I didn't lose any of my edits. I didn't lose any of my pictures. So if people ask me, why don't you reuse memory cards? Right there. Because
that's your step one backup.
In the field.
For permanently. Because, all of David's photographs that are on SD cards remain on there. And they're all bagged and they're all labeled. So he has a
system.
I was going to say a significant amount of SD cards, but they're relatively cheap.
They are.
Especially nowadays, and especially compared to the cost of the hardware and the trips that we take. So,
yeah, I mean, if you spend thousands and thousands of dollars going to some place and you're spending not just your money, but your time, and you experience all this great stuff, I mean, the heartbreak to lose that.
Yeah, not worth it.
It's just not worth it.
Yeah.
And I know that's why you specifically have a theory about memory card size.
Well, right. That's changing as camera files get bigger.
It is.
In the 24 megapixel era, I was always a 32 gig shooter.
I
was always 32 gigs and never bigger because that forced me to split my photography outings on multiple memory cards so that if one got corrupted or if I lost one or whatever, I still had something. Because if I used a 256 gig card at least 2 or 3 years ago and I just had my whole trip on one card and something happens to that card, I was done for. Now that strategy is a bit different because the files have gotten much bigger.
Yes.
Now, but even now I'm at 64 for the most part. Now you're doing video, that's different. I'm talking about stills and stills only. I'm doing mostly 64s. I also find them to be a little bit faster when I'm really looking for that last bleeding edge of speed.
Sure.
Just because the camera reads them and writes a little bit faster. It's negligible for most use, but
You mean versus like a 256?
right, exactly. Yeah. So I find the sweet spot to be 64. I'd rather have. I think I have like 7 or 8 64s.
Right.
I know I reuse my cards, unlike David. He also shoots a lot more than I do, so it's we have different approaches. But certainly, if you're going on a lot of trips and you're traveling a lot and you're mobile, it makes a lot of sense to use David's approach. It seems on the surface like that's crazy, but the reality is, if I buy an M10 for $7,000, how many? Well, I can get 100 memory cards for that.
Yeah.
Or more. There'll be 2. I don't even know, whatever it is. It's
Right.
tons and tons. You could have a lifetime supply of memory cards.
Think about what film used to cost.
Exactly. It's the same approach as film, except it's a lot harder to mess it up.
And you get way more pictures for a lot less money.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So it is
sure.
actually a relatively logical approach when you step away and you think about it objectively.
Yeah.
So, but the key is, of course, just like you organize your negatives into sleeves and you label them, if you don't organize your cards and you lose some data, you're never going to know what's on what, and you're going to have to start going through like.
Yeah. Now I should acknowledge these are not forever permanent. I expect the lifespan of these. I don't know. It's somewhere like 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
They're not forever. So it's good insurance in the meanwhile.
Yeah.
And it's funny when I've gone back to a lot older images, like from 2009, and you're like, oh, well, now I don't really have to worry about that. Maybe I'll start using those cards again. It's like, I'm not going to use a 1 gigabyte card.
Yeah, right. It's like they get outdated anyway.
Yeah, they were outdated. So
all right, so let's keep going.
Okay, so that's step
we've
one.
We've got our cards that we retain.
Yep.
You've got your field hard drive that you could lose if you're not careful. Now you get back to home base. What's next?
So then I generally, part of this is workflow, so how I'm gonna move my Lightroom catalog around, but what I do after I'm done kind of with my edits and things like that is for a while I actually work off these drives because they're just really fast. I don't even have to transfer this to my computer. I can just work off the drive because it's almost as fast as the internal drive anyway. And it's the same for video too. So these are great. This is another reason to have external SSDs and not external spinning drives.
There you go.
Also because, and we'll talk about this a little later, because I keep my Lightroom catalogs in the cloud, I can bring this to different computers that I might be at, either on a laptop or if I want to move to a desktop to finish editing. The catalog, I just open the same catalog from the cloud and I tell it to look for the files on this drive. So it's pretty cool. From here, what I do is I use a NAS, an NAS. And I know you're going to ask me, what is a NAS?
Yes, I am.
NAS
Not for my sake, but for the viewers'
stands
sake.
for Network Attached Storage, i.e. it's a storage device that sits on your network. I happen to use a brand called Synology that I have links, again, in the description for a 6-bay and an 8-bay. I have an 8-bay Synology, which means it can put 8 spinning hard drives in it. And I remember I said spinning hard drives, super bad, right? The great thing about the Synology, it has its own operating system that's it's a Linux variant, and it comes pre-installed. It's got a graphical interface that you access through the web, and it's pretty easy, actually. And I use something called SHR-2, which stands for Synology Hybrid RAID 2. The 2 is for how many drives I can lose or will fail before I lose any data. So what it's doing is it's spreading out the information that I put on it across all the drives that are in there and has redundancy for 2 drives out of 6, 7, 8 drives could fail simultaneously, catastrophically, and I won't lose anything. So that's second level of backup, is the Synology. I have run out of space on that. I am actually looking personally to upgrade that to a 12-bay rack mount with much larger drives.
Now, David, of course, generates more data than most people do.
Video files.
But you can think of a NAS as an external hard drive
just
that
keeps growing.
That's over a network that isn't a single drive.
Yeah.
That's a group of drives that aren't independent of each other. They work
together.
They're run by an operating system outside of your computer's operating system to be the most efficient backup possible.
Yeah, and it's a very, 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 very stable system. It's called ZFS.
More acronyms.
More acronyms.
I guess this is what we do when you get into computers.
It's a much more stable file architecture than, say, Windows or Mac. It's called ZFS. It's a Linux-based thing, and it's used in servers around the world. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's about this big.
The Synology is about yay big. I have a little desktop version.
I mean, you could keep it in your house. It's not some like giant server thing. It's very manageable.
It makes a little bit of noise because it's got 8 spinning drives in it and cooling fans. So maybe stick it in a closet. You don't have to be in the same room with it.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. It's on your network.
Yeah, put it in your basement.
Yeah,
put it in a closet, and then just plug it into your network, and you're good to go. Yeah. And actually, the one I have is a gigabit connection, but some of the newer ones you can put a 10 gigabit Ethernet card in, which, if you have a fancy pants 2017 or 2020 27-inch iMac, you can upgrade to a 10 gigabit network card. And if you're lucky enough to have a Mac Pro, that comes with 10 gigabit network cards. What that means is you actually have faster than this level of speed over your network. And you could work off your files as if they were on your own computer, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I like Synology. Another one that you've probably heard of is Drobo. They actually have a Drobo in this building downstairs, a couple of them. They're okay. I don't love Drobo. I've heard of a lot of failures with Drobos. This
is our opinion, by the way.
This is my opinion. Don't hold it against me. My personal thing is, I know there's a lot of people who are very happy with Drobos. They look really cool. They're very easy. They're very automated. But I prefer the functionality of the Synology. If you want to get even more nerdy than that, there's another company called QNAP, but it's not as easy to use, but it does have more performance and features. But I like the Synology. It's a good balance between ease of use, just kind of plug and play, and power, and performance. So I've had great luck with the Synologies.
Here's a good question. It just came over email.
Yep.
That's sort of related. If SD cards are the same let me hold this up so if SD cards are the same technology as SSD drives, why are they reliable for only 5 to 10 years? Alternatively, does this mean that SSD drives have limited life?
Everything has limited life in computers.
Yes. Okay. Nothing is forever.
Nothing is forever, but the reality is, and the way I look at it, because I have a growing amount of information. Right now in my Synology, I have about 25 terabytes worth of image and video files. Now, maybe that's a little bit more than most of you guys. That's why I need to expand to a new one, because I kept adding drives, and I ran out of drive space. So the idea is that, just like what I said, I am moving to another Synology with bigger hard drives, which means they're brand new, which means they'll last that much longer. So as I keep upgrading my storage capacity, I'm using new hardware to do it.
Just to summarize quickly, hard drives
are moving.
Hard drives do not last forever, but because we're constantly generating new data and using newer technology as it becomes available to back up and store images, your upgrade time for new and better is shorter.
It's within the lifespan.
Right, shorter than the penultimate lifespan of a hard drive.
Yes.
That's what he's getting at.
Yes.
And of course, the SD cards, which we're not upgrading all the time, will eventually stop working. But
eventually.
I mean, hopefully by then we've generated so many new pictures that we're not too worried about it.
Okay. That being said, the drives that I choose to use that I've also linked, there's specific drives for use in a NAS that you would not want to use in something like this. So don't think that you can just go to Best Buy, buy one of these, and rip the drives out, because it is a lot cheaper. It's like half the price.
Yeah.
I use enterprise-level NAS drives that are designed for 24/7 usage. They don't ever turn off. They're spinning all the time. So they're designed to run better. I use what's called Seagate Exos drives. They're actually filled with helium, so there's no friction inside the drive.
Wow, you are going all out. I didn't think we'd use the word helium on the broadcast, but okay.
Yeah. But to give you an idea, it's about, for one of those enterprise level drives, about $300 for a 12 terabyte drive.
Yeah, but we're talking about a pretty serious setup, although one that's very stable, that is very
expandable,
accessible, expandable, it's got a good lifespan, and if you're shooting a lot with either a lot of video or high megapixel cameras, S3, SL2, whatever, you will fill up that data very quickly, especially with video. I mean, how big? How big is the video file from this live stream going to be?
It's pretty big.
Yeah, terabytes, right?
No, this is compressed, so gigabytes.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
some of these are compressed files.
It's only like 50 gigabytes.
So we've probably.
Okay, now there's one more
Oh.
level of backup.
Oh my goodness! I thought we got.
But wait, there's more.
Okay.
Okay, so from the Synology, because people will tell you, IT professionals will tell you, a RAID is not a backup. It just is a more secure way to store your files in a bigger space. So I use a Dropbox for Business service, which I've also linked to down below. And what's cool about the Synology is it has these different apps. And one of those apps is called Cloud Sync. So what's running in the background all the time without me doing anything, when I deposit new information on the drive, it automatically uploads and syncs to my Dropbox account. So yes, I have 25 terabytes backed up on Dropbox.
How much space does Dropbox give you?
They give me unlimited.
Aha! Someone's gonna ask that if I don't.
Yeah, so
And how much does that cost?
It costs $75 a month.
So you for $75 a month, which is not crazy, you get unlimited storage to
Yes.
back up
Yes.
your files.
Yes.
Okay, summarizing.
Um,
That's pretty good.
iCloud will not give you that much. Microsoft OneDrive will not give you that much. Google Drive will not give you that much. Most of them cap out around 2 terabytes. Now, for some people, that's plenty, and it's going to cost a lot less, $10 a month versus 75. But it's a lot less than, saying, going to Amazon, which is probably the best in the business, but Amazon charges for the same, like, $2,000 a month for that.
Wow.
And more as you keep filling it up. But it's, one of the most reliable data centers in the world.
But Dropbox is a pretty big name.
And Dropbox is reliable.
Everybody has a consumer Dropbox account. This is just enterprise level.
Yeah, another one that I've heard really good things about that I haven't used personally, because I have used Amazon, I have used Dropbox, I have used the other ones, is called Backblaze, which apparently, as long as a drive is attached to your computer, they don't limit the space of your backup. So if you mount a network drive to show as a drive on your computer, it is also unlimited, but it's kind of like a loophole.
Now we're getting real techy.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway,
Whew. Okay,
I have links to all that.
I think we should probably stop talking about computer hardware, and we're going to begin sort of segue into the second half of tonight's episode, which is about Lightroom. Again, not about like how do I make my picture bluer or whatever. This is more about best practices, although we'll show some tips and tricks.
Yeah, I've got Lightroom up here.
But before we do that, I think we all need a little gear geek break.
Is this the
This is like the intermission? No, don't go away. Before we get into the next section, while I have a captive
I'm going to use that
audience-
opportunity to get a drink.
Yes, hydrate. You've been talking a lot, and you will be talking a lot more because this is your area. So I always try on these episodes to talk about like cool new things, little gizmos and gadgets that we've picked up in the store or things that I like. And I did that 2 weeks ago with the DAG frame lighter, which was really cool. And tonight, I'm going to talk about something, a couple of different things, very short, very simple, small stuff that you may not even notice popped up on our website over the past few days. So if you shoot the SL, SL2, or Q2, you're familiar with the BPCL4 battery. Here we go. This is a battery for the SL601, the SL2, and the Q2. If you're like me, you travel with at least 2 to 3, if not more, depending on how many cameras you're bringing with you. Now, these are expensive batteries. They have weather seals here that incorporates into the body, and they've got the contacts here. So when I travel with a lot of them, I try to keep them both protected and also organized. How do I know which ones are charged, which ones are dead when I'm in the field? So there's a gentleman in Germany who makes, random little like gizmos and gadgets. And over the years, we've had carried some of his products. Well, his newest creation is called the SL battery box. And this is polycarbonate, it's plastic. It's got a nice sort of textured finish, it's black. And what this is designed to do is to hold 2 of the SL or Q2, SL2 batteries together. So the way it works is it just like you slide into the camera, this little groove. You slide the battery in. Now it's safely stored. And when you want to release it, there is a release lever on the back. I don't know how to do this backwards. You pop it and the battery comes out. Sorry, backwards, here we go. You push it down, see there's like a little, goes like that. Battery comes out. But you'll notice, just like on the camera body, it doesn't actually fall right out. You tap it and it comes out. So I'll show that one more time. It works the same way the cameras do. You have a little release lever. You flip it, battery comes out. One more time, release lever, tap it, comes out. So now, this one will hold 2 batteries. It also has, so there's the 2 batteries installed there. It has these indicators on the side. They're like little switches. You slide them up and you can see if you can see that there. you can indicate whether the battery is discharged or charged. So as you're using the batteries, you can just adjust that slider and quickly just look and know which one of these is charged or not, which is pretty cool. Now, if you have more than 2 spare batteries, as I often do, he also makes one for 4 batteries. So this is the SL battery box 4X. This is the SL battery box 2X. If you go to our homepage and just scroll to the bottom under the new arrivals or new product section, you'll see them. Same idea. It takes 4 batteries, like so. You slide 2 in on that side, and I think I have at least one more. And you slide another one in here. And this is a little bit bigger, but this is great for keeping them safe in your bag while you're traveling, or if TSA asks you to take out your lithium batteries, or just to keep them organized. If you have 8, 12, 16 batteries for your Q2 and your SL2 or whatever on a long trip, this is a great way, especially if you're not frequently recharging them, to safely store them and also indicate using the little sliders which ones are charged or not. So this is the SL battery box 2X, SL battery box 4X. These are 2 new cool little things. They're made in Germany. They feel really nice. They're light. The last quick thing made by the same guy is, if you're familiar with the SL right angle finder that he makes, it's actually an optical finder. There's now one for the SL2. And what this does is, just like the old school, it slides onto the hot shoe of the SL2, and it gives you a right angle or rotatable optical viewfinder. Now, of course, it's an optical finder into an EVF, but it actually looks pretty good. It has a magnifier as well. You can see that here. So we have 1X or 2X. Let me show that. So these have been pretty popular for the SL. This is just a redesigned version for the SL2. So if you like using the EVF and you have the camera, low on a tripod or on the ground or just at an odd angle, and you want to be able to see through the EVF, you don't want to have to use Wi-Fi and the Photos app, this is a nice way around it. So this is the SL2 angle finder, right angle finder. Just a cool little gizmo made by the same gentleman who makes the battery boxes. So just a quick aside, quick little Home Shopping Network infomercial for some cool new gadgets that.
Well, I got to scroll through the comments.
Recently
too, so.
Yeah, I think David. Since this is David's topic, otherwise I want to give David a little talking break. So
Yeah.
Again, you just
I think this is pretty cool too. By the way.
And they're not going anywhere, right? So they only come out when you flip the release lever, and even then, if it gets hit in your bag, the battery's not coming out. You have to tap it just like on the camera. So
I think for me, I would prefer 2 of these than one of those.
Yeah, I think it depends on.
Because I could stash them in different pockets.
Yeah, if you had a rolling bag, this would be nice because it's hard to lose this because it's a bit larger. Like lose this in your bag.
Right.
But if you have a shoulder bag, I'd probably go with the battery box 2X because it is a lot more compact. Of course, 2 of these are exactly the same size as 4X, but you can relocate them around. So anyway, cool stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just a quick tangent from our extremely technical topic. But of course, now enough of this. We're going to get into Lightroom.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of technical stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, we could just keep going and then do Lightroom in another video if we want.
Yeah. So these guys are.
What do we got? Tell me.
No, just a lot of good commentary. A lot of people have already kind of followed that advice of upgrading their own RAM and their iMacs and things like that. I've got some people who are well aware of Synology and using that themselves. So. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. This is like really good, like ASMR. Right? If I put the battery. Hold on. Wait. Here we go. Oh yeah, that's good, right? And then we release it. Hold on. Oh, there we go. Good click. I decided if you're laughing in the background doesn't help. This is for Ashlyn, who's always.
Do the sound.
You get to do your shutter sound on the M10. Sorry. So, do we have any more technical? Well, I think we got to get to Lightroom. So,
well, there is.
What do we got?
So there was a basic question. I think I did answer that, but I want to loop back.
Okay.
Because there was a couple questions about why would you build a computer versus why would you just buy a Mac?
Okay, that's fair.
And look, on a PC you can buy a Dell, you can buy an HP. Why would I? So some people want to know, why would I build my own computers? And one, it's kind of like, why would you go into the darkroom? I enjoy it. It's actually fun for me. I find it to be creative. It's like tinkering on a car. If you're a car guy and you like to get under an engine, So I actually enjoy the process of building a computer and doing the research and speccing it out. And aesthetically, I actually enjoy it because I kind of don't believe that PCs or home built stuff has to be ugly. I think it can be very pretty. I actually have a case in point for that.
No.
I do.
Are you going to show the goodies?
I am. So I saw something that I showed it to my wife, who we've talked about before. She likes nice things, as you all probably know. And I showed her this kind of cool case. There were some videos I saw on it that it's passively cooled, no fans. And of course, she looked at it and said, I want that. I want you to make one of those for me. So I did. I brought it just to show that not all PCs are these ugly black boxes.
Don't hurt yourself.
Don't hurt myself. There we go. And this...
Oh my gosh. If you're tuning in right now and you don't know what's going on,
you have no idea.
This is the alien spacecraft that has landed in the studio.
Oh gosh, it's in shadow right now.
Oh my goodness,
There's too many drives.
This is a mess.
This is a mess. I'm gonna move a few things.
This is a good analogy for the way David and I work together. Actually, we're just humming along just fine, and he literally just throws a boulder into the mix.
All right,
just piling. If you can see the pile of hard,
there
there's like
we go.
40 terabytes of random data
I know.
on this desk.
So this is. I just saw this and I thought it was so cool. It's perhaps the most Mac.
Careful.
Yeah, it's perhaps the most Mac-like PC case I've ever seen.
Oh, you're causing all kinds of destruction.
I am, and you notice I've turned it on all four sides. It's all extruded aluminum, and the ports are actually on the bottom. Ooh. So you see it's actually vertically mounted inside. And if you look at these little channels on the side, right here, they've created additional surface area because this is actually a passively cooled computer. Apple attempted to do this with the Power Mac G4 Cube back in the day, if you remember. You're getting a nice little close up there.
There we go.
But this uses the external panels and a series of heat pipes and lots of thermal paste to passively cool. These are actually heat sinks. So when the computer is running, 2 of these are for the CPU, and 1 is for the GPU, and 1 is for the power supply.
This is actually what the SL3 is going to look like.
Yeah, the SL3 is actually in here, yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself.
But it's just cool, and it kind of looks like a work of art, and it's floating off the table. So it's made by a company called Streacom, and actually my computer that I have at home is also a Streacom, but actively cooled. I have fans in it. But it's about the same size, it's a small form factor, and all extruded aluminum, so it's very pretty.
Somebody wants to know if it's bulletproof. Well, let me just test that out real quick.
I don't think it's bulletproof. But it was a lot, let's say, it was fun for me to build in this because it's such a small case to put all these components in. And believe it or not, remember I'm talking about minimum configuration. This computer kills for Lightroom. This has got an 8-core AMD. It's got 32 gigs of RAM. And a GTX 1650 Ti or graphics card. So it actually, you could do video editing on this computer, and it's completely dead silent because there's no fans in it.
For this build, ballpark? If you remember.
$2,500.
So not cheap, but
$2,000 to $2,500. Yeah.
This is a pretty high-end machine.
Yeah.
We're not talking about it looks like a compact little thing, but it's actually
well, you have to understand
computer.
The case itself.
Yeah.
I mean, the case itself was like several $100s, and then it had to get a special power supply that was also a couple $100s.
The price you pay for beauty, I suppose. But,
right. I could have built the same system with the same components in a regular black box computer for around $1,400 or $1,500.
Wait, you spent $1,000 on the case?
Mm-hmm.
You're crazy.
Because listen,
oh man,
aesthetics matters, and I think that's why I certainly cannot fault anyone for wanting to buy Apple. They're beautiful products. But I really liked the challenge of working in this, and it was like putting everything together in 3D and test fitting it before I actually put it together because it's
cool,
fun for me.
It's cool. I don't know if I would spend that kind of money on a case, but you're a much bigger nerd than I am. Don't put it over there.
I'm just gonna put it there.
Knock it over.
So anyway, that is.
I'll move it.
We always every episode we have to show off something that belongs to my wife.
I'm gonna put it over here.
That belongs to my wife. So we have little matchy aluminum computer cases in our office.
Oh, you have 2 of those.
Well, no, mine's the same brand, the same color, but it's air cooled.
Okay.
So I actually do find it enjoyable. You may not. You may not want to go down that road because you know what? I love working on computers, but I don't want to fix my own car. I'll go to a mechanic or I'll go to the dealership. I think different people are into different stuff, right? So I've also put links down in the description. If you want the I mean, there's more than I like it. The other reason is you get a lot of performance for the dollar, and you get to pick out exactly the components that you want. So you can spend money where it counts and not where it doesn't. But I would say if you are not comfortable with that, but you want kind of the benefits of having a custom case and all the components and all the stuff, I left a list of reputable builders down in the description. Just keep scrolling down towards the bottom. And all of those companies have been around for close to 20 years, and they all, some of them make, some pretty ostentatious looking gaming systems, but they also, most of them also make workstations for imaging. So it's something to consider. And the nice thing about that versus building it yourself, you'll actually get a warranty and a support phone number. And these are all US-based companies. So if anything goes wrong, you call them up and they ship you something new. So I think that it's a pretty good deal. You can kit out systems there for $2,500 to $3,000 that will be just absolute monsters when it comes to Lightroom performance. So you can spend the same amount of money and get an iMac. I mean, it really comes down to your choice. And that's all I'm going to say in terms of hardware. Again, you choose what you like. And
I think we should keep talking about hardware and just do Lightroom for another episode.
Oh, yeah?
We've been, I don't know if anyone wants to talk about this live, but it's,
oh, wow.
We've been going an hour and 40 minutes. We got some more stuff to talk about, I think.
So maybe let's just talk about general workflow and backup.
Yeah.
Or we can talk about iPad and approaches there, too.
What do you guys want to talk about? There's so much.
What would you guys like?
Yeah, right now we're at a crossroads because there's so much we can cut. We have another 30 minutes or so where we can geek out about this stuff. So we talked about hard drives, video cards, RAM, monitors, calibrating.
Oh, yeah, I need to talk about that, too.
What do we got?
So yes, there's some comments here, both a late comment and also earlier in the stream. Yes, Apple announced back in May they are coming out with Apple Silicon. They're basically ARM chips, like what's in the iMac or in the iPad Pro and the iPhone.
Yeah, here's the app. You got room for it now.
They have the A16, 12, whatever it is, processor in here. That is multi-core. I think it has 8 cores in here now, or more.
This is an iPad Pro?
It's an iPad Pro, yeah. These things are ridiculously fast because the programs are so highly optimized for them. And obviously, this also has no fans. It doesn't overheat. It stays nice and cool and gets insanely long battery life versus a laptop. And it's super tiny, right? So Apple has announced that they're going to be migrating all of their systems away from Intel processors, and they're going to be making their own higher power ARM chips for laptops and desktops, supposedly starting the end of this year, and I think carrying through till 2024 for the transition. So
exciting times ahead.
Exciting times ahead. I don't know what that's going to mean ultimately because these products don't exist yet, so it kind of falls in the territory of like
hypothetical.
Hypothetically, it's good.
Yeah.
But
let's just because we're on a roll, so let's continue to take questions about anything we talked about: computer hardware, monitors, RAM, backup.
Yeah, people want iPad for editing, hardware.
Okay, why don't we?
I'm
going to talk about iPad.
Yeah, why don't we talk about that? Because you do a lot of this.
So with iPad, look, if you asked me 2 years ago, hey, would you ever edit your images on an iPad? I'd be like,
yeah,
no, I wouldn't. I mean, they're great. iPad is great if you want to show off images and scroll through them and be like, look at that. It's a photo album. My opinion has changed significantly. iPad Pros, both the 11-inch I have here and even more the 12.9-inch, are so fast. And the screens are so amazing. Just, I was updating some of the apps just to make sure we were current, and I'm looking at the screen. I'm like, man, that is a gorgeous screen.
Yeah.
So Apple's done an incredible job with this product. And I've actually had an iPad since the very first iPad.
I remember when you got it. It was like a game changer back then.
Yeah, and it was huge.
Yeah.
And so slow.
Yes,
and I couldn't do anything. And then I had the iPad 2. And
so the question is, and then let's dive into it, like just to rehash, in 2020 on a modern iPad Pro, I have an SL2.
Yeah.
Can I edit my images on here in Lightroom and not be miserable?
Yes.
Okay.
But Yes, but.
Yes, but.
Yes, but. So I also left recommendations for iPad Pros, and this one's really easy. The only option you have is storage space. If you're planning on editing images, you are going to have to pony up and get 1 terabyte.
Okay.
Period. After your operating system and all your apps and whatever, you need space to actually work on images. And these are really big images.
Yeah.
Apple has actually opened up the iPad OS significantly with some of the later iOS versions. And now you can almost use this as a laptop. This is just the standard flippy flip case. You know, it's nothing special.
Technical term?
Yeah, technical term. I don't even know what they call it. Folio case.
Yeah.
You know, and it's magnetic and whatever. The newer one actually has a suspended, I'm gonna mock this up. It's got like a suspended thing where it goes like that and there's a keyboard underneath it with a trackpad. So even Apple is like, well, maybe it's a laptop. Of course, keep in mind just the case actually weighs more than the iPad, so it doesn't tip over. So it's doubles the weight of your iPad. Just something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
And it's also pretty expensive. It's like a $400 keyboard, I think.
Wow.
So
well, it's an Apple product, so
it's an Apple
what do you
product.
expect?
So actually, you need to think about that seriously. You have an iPad that's $1,500 to have the capacity to edit, and then you're going to spend another $400, and then maybe some accessories like I'm going to show you here, an external drive, and suddenly you're now spending north of $2,000 on an iPad editing system.
Yeah.
When you could just get a MacBook Pro.
Well, okay, so that segues to another question. Why would I edit on an iPad, like properly kitted out, when I could get a MacBook Pro? Or can I not get a high enough performance MacBook Pro for $2,000? What do you say there?
I think really the starting configuration for a really good MacBook Pro for editing, I think I put in there as $2,500 or $2,600.
Okay, so still a little bit more, and that's starting. But is it going to perform better, obviously, than the iPad?
For now.
For now, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and of course you get a full file system. On my biggest issue with iOS is it doesn't necessarily expose all of the file structure to you. It protects you from yourself because that's a very Apple thing to do, you know. And you really can't screw things up. And I joke about that. The real reason is for security. It's so that someone can't put a malicious app on your device, on your phone or your iPad, and then steal data from another app, like a banking application or something. So they keep everything compartmentalized for security reasons. But unfortunately, for imaging, that kind of stinks when you want to move things between programs. Thankfully, the Leica Photos app, which you can get for iPad, the Photos Pro or whatever, has a little button there that just sends it directly to Lightroom without you having to do anything, which is pretty neat also.
Well, so another question, since I don't own an iPad, how do I get my images? Let's say I don't own an iPad or I want to start editing. How do I get them from my SD card to the iPad?
The most basic way is to get one of, did I pick the right one? Yes. To get one of these.
In the pile. Get a close up on that. It's also a little overexposed.
Super overexposed. I got to move it back.
Here we go.
You got that, Jose?
There we go.
Yeah,
It's
this
out of
is
focus.
is it kind of in focus?
There we go.
Yeah, so this is an Apple SD card reader to the USB Type-C, which is what the iPad Pro uses, not a Lightning connector. You can also get these aftermarket in a white box, but this is like half the price on Amazon. It's the same thing. Or if you want something that actually looks cool and matches, that's not white, because I don't understand why they do that, you can also get one of these, which also works perfectly fine. This is the exact same thing.
Made by who?
I don't know. These are
Random.
Satechi.
Oh, some random company. Okay.
Random company, AB.
You dropped it.
Oh, here. And here is yet another one that also, looks nice too.
So there's a lot of options, but that's a basic question, but for those of us
So
who
you
haven't
need an SD card reader.
done it. Just like for a computer.
Right. You could use, and these work great for a computer too. You could use the Photos app and send over Wi-Fi.
Why wouldn't you do that? Why would you do that?
Because time.
And camera battery.
Yeah.
It drains your camera battery.
I mean, you can keep it plugged in charging, but it's really slow over Wi-Fi because these files are massively large.
Yeah.
And
I think if you're on the fly and want to just grab one or two images for a quick edit to share with a client or a friend or whoever, fine. But anything more than that, you're pulling out the SD card and.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is, if you're using a CL you know, or an M10P and it's got 24 megapixel files, they're a lot easier to work with over Wi-Fi than an SL2 at 47. That's files, you're never going to get around file size, and transferring over Wi-Fi just isn't as fast as a wired connection. Okay, now if I use this and I can connect it directly to my iPad here, the issue, of course, is now as I load up my iPad is going to fill up very quickly. You probably can get away with, you know, doing a full trip on just an iPad internally. But make sure we talk about backup strategy. Make sure you don't get rid of your memory cards, because what happens if someone takes your iPad or it falls in a Venice Canal or whatever? These are kind of popular to steal, and they easily disappear. So make sure that you don't delete your memory cards. Or there's yet another option. And again, remember I talked about Apple really expanding the functionality of the iPad. So you can get something like this. Apple doesn't sell it, but it's kind of matchy also.
Can we get a close-up on that? Yes, there we go.
So there's various iterations of this. I just got this one. This is a USB-C. Actually, this is a Thunderbolt 3 connector specifically, and I'll explain why in a second. So it's Thunderbolt 3 to a little hub here. So you have 3 USB 3 Type A ports, which are the kind of the old style, and it has a USB Type C pass-through power port here, and then it has an SD card reader right there, and an HDMI out as well.
Wow, that has got a lot of stuff on it.
And it's really little. Look, it's super tiny and very light. Now, Apple allows you to use this as well, and what this allows you to do is I can now hook up an external monitor through here. I can keep it charged through here. I can import my SD card, but wait, there's more. I can also load an external drive.
Wow.
So now I can load my pictures onto the external drive, not onto the iPad.
Is there a link to this little doodad in your description here?
Yes.
Okay. This is the coolest thing I've seen you show tonight. So
yeah. So this
if I had an iPad, I'd want one.
So this is really cool. And what's really neat as well is, I don't know if I have it in here.
What are you looking for?
The keyboard. I left it out.
Oh, that's okay.
You can also use a wireless keyboard or a wireless mouse as well. Because, you know, Josh was asking me, he's like, oh, it's kind of annoying to have to use your finger for everything. It's tiring.
Yeah.
You can either use the Apple keyboard.
Bluetooth.
Well, you can use the iPad one.
Oh, okay.
That kind of pseudo makes it into a laptop because it has a trackpad built in.
Right.
But a lot of people for editing really prefer a mouse, and you can just use either an Apple Magic Mouse, you could use a Logitech mouse, you can use whatever Bluetooth mouse you can find, and you can use a Bluetooth mouse, Bluetooth keyboard with the iPad. You can connect it to an external display, you can use it as a card reader, have a card reader, and you can have external storage as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that you're talking about a tablet PC, but a tablet computer that is essentially a full functioning Lightroom editing powerhouse
for the most part,
travel. Maybe you don't want to bring a laptop or can or don't have one or whatever. I could see myself using that for sure. Now I want to get an. You're making me want an iPad Pro. I'll just take that. Cool. I'll just take that one. It's fine.
So you have a lot more options than you did just a year ago. Yeah. Apple has really expanded the functionality of the iOS.
Let me ask you a follow-up question. Somebody may be thinking this. Let's say you don't have enough SD cards and you are backing or you are editing and importing into your iPad and you have to format a card to continue shooting on your trip. Is there a way to get the files off of there onto your computer? I don't actually know. That's why I'm asking.
I think...
I'm putting you on the spot.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. I think you have to use it through... you can connect it through Thunderbolt to the USB-C connector.
Okay. So you're not totally lost if you have to format your cards. Okay.
No, and you can set it up as a drive. I think you have to have iTunes installed on your computer.
Okay.
If you have a Mac, you already have it installed. And yes, there is iTunes for PC as well, so you can do that.
Okay. Yeah. Just curious. Just extrapolating out.
I would take that to the Genius Bar at the Apple Store.
I guess, and that is actually another advantage of buying a Mac, is it has a very, very strong customer support system where you can go into the store, you can talk to a person.
Yeah.
There's a whole community built around the Apple computer product
You get
line.
to think different like everybody else. That's what it is,
Yeah,
right?
that's you're being a little political now, but okay.
What? Apple, think different. That's like the thing.
So anyway, I think that is another argument for the Mac. Because if you build your own PC, you're, as David might have already said, you are your own IT department. You're not going to...
Unless you get a system integrator like Origin PC.
Right, but if you're
Fusion
just
or
doing
whatever.
from scratch, you're on your own. So I mean, obviously there's forums and things like that, but
Tons of forums, yeah.
you're going to be tinkering it yourself. But the advantage is David's video editing machine there costs a fraction of what an equivalent Mac Pro would cost.
I mean, that's not a cheap computer. That is a $5,000 configuration.
Right, but how much would a Mac Pro like that cost? Twice that?
For the same performance,
Yeah.
$20,000.
So for a quarter of the price,
Yeah.
David's able to get a machine that is insane. And it's built exactly the way he wants, so he doesn't have to make any compromises.
Well, not just that. I can also upgrade it to a 64 core with
Ooh.
256 gigs of RAM.
That'll be next week's episode.
and up to 20 terabytes of SSD or something.
So if you've learned anything from this video, it's that you can do a lot with off-the-shelf pre-built stuff, but if you want the best performance and the best dollar for performance, either build your own PC or have somebody build it for you. Do you have any of the build companies in the description?
Yeah, they're in the
Okay,
description,
so
yeah.
David's got some links in the description to companies that will actually build PCs for you.
To spec.
You can spec them out. You don't have to deal with all the tinkering. They'll make it for you.
And a lot of these guys also, they're very familiar with Adobe stuff because they build workstations.
Yeah.
So you can call them, they're humans, and you say, hey, I need a computer to edit 50 megapixel.
But say David
images.
and Josh sent you. I don't want to see how many people call them. They don't know us.
They don't know us
They
at
will.
all.
They will after this.
No, and by the way, up front, we are not affiliates
No,
of these
we don't
people.
sell this stuff. We
sell
don't.
it.
There's no we have no monetary. This is just us being nerds. Because David and I have both built our own computers for years. The computer I have at home I built a decade ago, and I've just been
still working great.
upgrading it. I've hit the wall a little bit now, but really only recently. I put in a solid state, I put in more RAM, put it in another video card. I mean, I've been, and it's not that hard.
Right.
And all I got to do is clean the dog fur out of it, and so it's really, you don't have to be a super genius to do it. It's actually not that complicated.
No.
It's like almost like Legos or an erector set or something like that, where
It's
you're
fun.
just
It's really fun.
and there's tons of YouTube videos out
Oh my
there.
gosh, yeah.
It's a huge community of people starting at all different levels, building PCs. So don't be intimidated by the fact that you think you have to be an electrical engineer, because you do not. You really can do this yourself, and there's a lot of resources out there. So.
Yeah, I'll probably the video description is actually full, but I can drop a comment with some of my favorite tech YouTubers that I watch.
Oh yeah.
Because these guys are, they're like encyclopedias when it comes to computers, like we're encyclopedias when it comes to cameras.
Yeah. Let's we should look at the chat and see. So I guess I have to apologize. We didn't get to cover Lightroom today, but that just means you guys will get a full episode about Lightroom coming up, because I think I don't want to rush through it. We only have, we're basically done. So we'll do After Capture Part 2 in 2 weeks. Which will cover Lightroom, and we'll probably have enough time to actually get into some editing tips as well as workflow and other things like that. So the thing is, now you know this. So if you have questions about Lightroom in any respect,
that's
drop
by
them
the
in
way, really good comment as well.
Fire away.
I forgot to mention.
yes.
Thank you for bringing it up.
Who brought it up? Let's give him credit.
I don't know. Al-Jawad
Okay.
brought up that the Apple Pencil is really cool.
Yeah.
Because you got your finger, you have a trackpad interface. If you get the Apple keyboard, you can use a mouse. You can also use the Apple Pencil, which is really cool, because then if you're doing local edits with the brush, adjustment brush, you just you paint right on the image. It's so intuitive.
That's pretty cool.
I think I would say more useful for Photoshop than for general Lightroom usage, because I wouldn't want to be using a pencil to do all my sliders.
Right.
But for doing brushes and masking in Photoshop, there's really nothing like using a pen input. And I know someone else asked up the chat as well about a Wacom tablet. I've used Wacom tablets going back longer than 20 years, care to admit.
I think it's Wacom, actually.
Wacom, Wacom,
I think somebody yelled at me at a trade show once for saying that.
But I haven't used one in a while, only because I've gotten pretty good with mouse and trackpad.
And also because he's mostly working in Lightroom.
Yeah.
The Wacom or Wacom, whatever, the tablets.
Kirsten uses one.
I owned one, I sold it. They're mostly, or they're really for Photoshop for masking
and graphic design and
graphic
Illustrator.
design, yeah. They're cool, and I don't even know the current line. I don't think they're that expensive anymore. But.
Yeah, but they did make one called, I don't know if they still do, it's called a Cintiq, which remember it was like 21-inch monitor, and it could lay flat and you could draw on it. But the iPad is basically like...
it's the same thing, except then more. So I would just get an iPad now with a pencil. But.
Yeah, I think that's really
anything
cool.
else in there that we need to address? We have the last couple last big questions before we call it a night. So again, we're going to do a part 2 after capture dedicated to post-production in Lightroom in terms of optimization of Lightroom, cataloging, backups, whatever questions people have.
Bill Kyber says, stay on hardware.
Stay on hardware. We are. This is a hardware. This is become a hardware episode. But what I do want to say real quick before we do anything else is, if between now and then or after our next episode, you have Lightroom questions or
get
help
them together.
We have partnered. We've talked about this before. We've partnered with John Latimer, who is a creative professional, printer, retoucher, Lightroom, Photoshop expert. I mean, he's been doing this his entire life. Professor. He taught this stuff at the college and university level. We offer a one-on-one, in 1 hour increments, training sessions, remote training sessions where he remotes into your computer, and John will give you customized Lightroom and imaging training.
Custom tailored.
Right, tuned to your needs and requirements in your own setup. So,
and also we can talk about file structure, file naming. We're going to get into that in the next episode.
Yes.
And also general workflow, backup practices.
Yeah, but we've worked with John for a while, and he's done actually Lightroom workshops physically here in the store, and we've extended that out now so he can do anything worldwide. So it's definitely something I can highly recommend because it is custom tailored. It's not like you're going to a workshop with 20 other students and you're all at different levels. This is one-on-one training totally based around your setup. And even if you don't have Lightroom, he can help you get it installed. He can recommend which account for Creative Cloud, all these things. So in between now and the next episode, I would definitely encourage you to sign up with John, try at least an hour, and then you can tune into us in 2 weeks, and you'll probably get a lot more out of it if you've not tried Lightroom before. So
that's a good suggestion.
Just a quick little aside.
This is an interesting question.
Fire away.
Vikrant says, given that most people view content on iPads and phones, would it not make sense to edit the pictures on an iPad or a phone itself? And I have an answer to that.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you?
I have a theory.
I see you thinking about
it. You go ahead. You have a better answer.
Well, first of all, if you rewind all the way to the beginning, if all your devices are kind of at a current standard, then it won't matter. But yeah, I mean, the phone screens are OLED, like on the latest iPhone generation. So they tend to be like super inky, rich black, and very vibrant colors. There are some OLED laptop screens, but generally, they're IPS style LCDs, which are usually better for color. OLED is very vibrant, but it's not necessarily as calibratable. So my answer to that is, yeah, I kind of do that. Like for my own Instagram, I have pictures, I take edited photos that I've already edited when I export them, we'll talk about all that stuff next time, but I export them and I have folders in the cloud of finished worked files that I can share. If people ask me for examples, if I'm going to put it online or if I'm going to put it on Instagram, I have these kind of edited finished files, but they never look quite right, especially when you're making them really small for the phone screen. So I use Lightroom Mobile on my iPhone to re-edit the picture, like take the finished file and just tweak it to make it look correct on the phone before I share it on Instagram. So yes, I actually do that exact thing because, and I wouldn't say I edit that instead of in the computer because I'm still taking finished photos that I've worked on in the computer. I'm just tweaking them to look the best they can on an iPhone since that's what most of my audience will be looking at it on.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, for me, I've been on Instagram a little bit longer than you. I just have a good feel for what I have to do in Lightroom because your images end up a lot of places. For me, most of my work does end up on social media. So I have just basically an export preset. It's just, a little more contrast. We pump up the whites and a few other minor things, and then the right size.
Yeah.
And those you can also get those online as well. So it depends on if you're using the finished file from Lightroom on your computer just for social media, or if you're going to have print, if you're going to have TV or whatever. But But yeah, you can do either one, and I think it would work. But it is important to understand that you do have to edit differently for different intents.
Of course.
If you're going to be on social media, or if you're going to be on print, or if you're going to be whatever, your editing is going to be different.
Yeah, and I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I think it's actually harder to edit for small output than large output. Large output's a lot easier, which we will get into next episode for workflow, which includes exporting and all that. I think we should
call it. It's 10 o'clock.
Yeah. Hopefully we.
So if you just watch, if you fast or rewind and see where I said we're going to talk about Lightroom, what I meant was we're going to talk about it in 2 weeks. But really, I know that having 2 hours to cover it is going to be way better than trying to rush through it the second half of a show. So bear with us. We promise we're going to give you a full, comprehensive Lightroom. And that'll also give me time to show some cool.
Someone asked about how much the training is. I think it's
$150 an hour.
$150 an hour for whatever you want.
It's on our website, and you can sign up. 1 hour, 5 hours, or you can do blocks, whatever you prefer. It is, if you're going to invest in the gear and the trips, invest in the training, and it'll pay off for sure. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we've done it.
Any lingering questions on hardware?
I don't think so. I think we've I mean, probably. But I think you can put a comment on the video, and David will answer it. So.
I will attempt, but
we're not tech support, so don't start asking me like why your 6-year-old laptop isn't working right. I will just run a big magnet over it until you go away.
Oh, I do want to mention this.
Okay.
I am going to mention this because this is an interesting point. People ask me, how much difference will I see upgrading from an older computer to a new computer?
We're going to finish on this.
This is an easy one.
Yes.
There's kind of a ballpark back in the napkin math here, because a lot of people are like, oh, I have my 2015 MacBook, and like, how much better is a new one really? I mean, is it worth it? Well, depends how much your time is worth. A new computer will roughly be of the same, let's say, number of cores and all that, will be roughly 5 to 10%, like actually call it 7 to 10% faster per year. And that's cumulative. So it could be that a 5-year-old computer, a newer computer, is at least 50% faster than a 5-year-old one in terms of getting work done. I'm not talking about like how fast does it, play Minesweeper. I mean like how fast does it import images, export images, do corrections, things like that. Things that matter to us as photographers. And that ballpark number is around 10% per year. So when I say that I upgrade my computer laptop every 2 to 3 years, I'm getting roughly 30% more performance, or roughly I'm taking a third less time to do the same task, which means I have that much more time to shoot and sleep than to be sitting in front of the computer.
Well said. I'll also say at the end of the show, I know we've deviated from Leica, and we will continue to do that for next week, but we're going to be back after that. And if there's more Leica topics you want us to cover, please tell us.
Yeah.
we obviously come up with our own ideas, but we always welcome suggestions from our viewers, from everybody. So if there's a particular topic that you feel it could be worthy for one of our 2-hour geek fests, please tell us, because we love getting ideas from everyone. So
yeah, as always, yes. Again, if you missed it, I have gazillion amount of information down in the description. Everything from most of the stuff we talked about: monitors, calibration, solid state drives, and places where you can get PCs built, or if you want my suggested MacBook or iMac configurations, place to get memory for that, to upgrade it to yourself and save the hundreds. And also to
tons of stuff.
To the training
session. Read it. Don't tell everything.
Just look.
Yes.
As always, hope you guys appreciate this. It's, as Josh said, it's a little different than our regularly scheduled programming, but we're talking so much about digital cameras. What about all the stuff that happens after you actually take the picture?
Yeah. And we're going to do another episode of this, so be ready.
And we're going to do another episode that's focused. We're going to get away from the hardware and all that kind of tech questions, and we're going to get into actual workflow, Lightroom tips and tricks.
2 weeks.
And also exporting, and maybe touch a little bit more, again, on backup and file organization. So make sure to subscribe to Red Dot Forum. It's that little button there. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you know when we post new content. And as always, we would love if you give us a nice thumbs up, drop a comment. Once the video is in archive form, permanent form, I'll be monitoring the permanent comments there, probably in about 2-3 hours.
All right.
And yeah, we'll see
We
you
did it.
guys in 2 weeks. And look forward to seeing your comments below. And stay tuned for our next episode.
We'll see you next time, and everybody have a good and safe Labor Day weekend coming up. We'll see you soon.
Thanks a lot.
Take care, guys.